Are you interested in how artificial intelligence will change the wines you drink? How will AI, or will AI, eventually replace people working in the vineyard? And how can you use AI to get food and wine pairing advice? Well, you're going to get those tips and more in our chat this evening. If you're just joining me live now, I'm Natalie McLean. I teach popular online wine and food pairing courses, that is, until I'm replaced by AI. And you've joined one of the most passionate groups on the internet who gather every Wednesday at 7 p.m. to talk to the most interesting people in the world of wine, like our guest, and I will introduce her momentarily. Now, this conversation was recorded for my podcast, Unreserved Wine Talk, but I will be here live in the comments. So get in there, let me know where you're logging in from, what the weather's like, what you're drinking, anything like that. And of course, if you're watching this on the replay, I want to hear from you as well. All right. So back to our guest. Dina. Now, Dina, I should have confirmed this before I got online with you, but I'm going to ask you to just confirm the pronunciation of your last name, please.
Sure, it's Dina Blikshteyn.
All right, okay. Thank you, Dina. So Dina Blikshteyn is a partner in the Intellectual Property Practice Group in the New York Law Office of Haynes Boone. I should note that although Dina is a lawyer, our discussion today is not intended as legal advice and is for informational purposes only. Dina focuses on artificial intelligence and machine learning, cloud computing, cybersecurity, web applications, algorithms, multimedia, and video streaming, among a host of other technologies. She is also the co-chair of the artificial intelligence practice at the firm. Prior to becoming a lawyer, Dina developed high-frequency trading systems that traded financial instruments on domestic and international exchanges. And she joins us now from New York. Dina, so great to have you here with us. Welcome.
Thank you, Natalie, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. It's my pleasure to be with you as well.
Awesome. Well, you just have a wonderful background. I'm fascinated by this topic. But before we dive in, I want to hear about some of your personal wine moments, because you are a wine person as well as being an expert on AI and law. So tell me a little bit about when you were in college, perhaps budget strapped, and trying to open a bottle of wine.
Yes, that's one of my first memories of drinking wine. And, being a poor student, as most of us are or were, we were taking a road trip. It was a group of four of us. And of course, we picked up some wines. And when we got back to the hotel, we realized we didn't have a wine opener. Of course, it's being 11 o'clock at night, and we were trying to relax after a long day of sightseeing. I believe we were in Canada at the time. We were just trying to figure out how to open this bottle of wine. So, me being an engineer at heart with an engineering degree, of course, I came up with the solution of using a pen and a boot. So it was very creative. We actually decided to push the cork inside the bottle of wine, which, something you're not supposed to do, but we didn't really have that many options at that time.
Desperate times
require desperate measures. And, long story short, it did work.
It did. So you said a pen and a boot?
And a boot.
So you're using the boot as a hammer kind of thing.
The boot was a hammer to push the cork right inside the bottle.
Very good. Good ingenuity right from the beginning. All right. Now, you've also mentioned that in various pictures that have been taken, family shots throughout the years, what's been unusual, or what does your family say about these photos?
Well, this is my older daughter who always teases me about this. It seems like every time somebody takes a picture of me in a social setting, I always have a bottle of wine next to me, or a glass of wine, right? And a couple of weeks ago we had a conference with other female attorneys in AI actually, and we were all in the restaurant trying to get to know each other, and we asked for a waiter to take a picture of us. Right. So this was after dinner, the table was empty. of course, there's 4 glasses of water and there's a glass of wine next to me. Like, of course.
Well, at least you're consistent.
Yeah, that's very true. It actually, my older one also drew a picture of a wine glass that's in my office right
Oh,
now.
wow. Oh,
Yeah.
so cute. And is one of them, is she making a 3D wine glass?
Yes. So apparently there is a new toy on the market, maybe not so new. I found out about it last week, where it's a 3D pen. It's sort of like a glue stick,
Okay.
right? So you can pick colors that go into it,
Yeah.
and it heats it up, and then you can create a 3D object.
Oh, wow.
So there's one behind me. So this is the one she created yesterday.
Oh,
There
wow.
we go. It's a piece of heart.
Okay. And if
Yeah.
you're listening to this on the podcast, you can watch the video version to
Right.
see the picture.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's very cute. But once they found out I was doing this podcast, so my younger daughter is actually creating a glass of wine in
Well, they're very supportive. That's
Yeah.
good. All right. I love those stories. Okay, Dina, let's dive into our topic. I'm going to take a stab at clarifying the difference between automation and artificial intelligence, and then you can correct my errors. As I understand it, automation focuses on repetitive tasks and rules and creates systems or software for computers or robots to follow them. This is my Wikipedia research showing through here. Artificial intelligence, or AI, is focused on non-repetitive tasks and getting computers or robots to make decisions on their own based on human input and machine learning. So in a sense, AI keeps growing and changing on its own, whereas automation does not without additional human intervention. How would you correct or expand on that?
Okay, so my take on AI. So AI is a subset of automation. Because once you start looking at AI is being trained on data, right? So the more complete the data is, the better AI would be trained, right? So what you're doing essentially is having an AI model and you're passing data through it over and over and over and over and over again until you're getting a result that you know is right. Right. Once that model is trained, it goes into the real world, and then you have data going in, and they'll determine the result for you. Right. So it's automated, but it's not necessarily based on a set of rules. It's more based on how, during the training stage, the model has been taught to think, like based on this initial data set.
Fascinating. Okay, so let's dive into how AI is related or involved with wine these days, including, all aspects: grape growing, winemaking, distribution, recommendations, and even food pairing. So this is, let's focus on the vineyard first. So we've heard about soil sensors calibrating irrigation in the past. How is this different when AI machines take over, or how is this improved upon with AI?
Right. Well, there's a lot of research that's going on right now by the company called Cuvata, right? And what this company is doing, it's pairing up with vineyards in Napa Valley, and it's sending robots through the vineyards that take pictures of the grapes. Right, and based on those pictures, they're trying to figure out whether the grapes or the wine, the trees are actually getting enough water, right? So whereas in your example, right, you have you determine whether the soil is getting enough water. Here, AI is determining whether the grapes themselves are getting enough water. So I guess it's how you're looking at it, Natalie. Do you want to know if the soil is wet enough for the roots, or if the water actually goes through the grapevine and reaches the grapes?
Right. Far more sophisticated, because different grapes probably have different levels of osmosis or ability to absorb moisture. So looking at the grape health and the leaf health is far more sophisticated and accurate, I would think, because you're hoping wet soil leads to vines that are healthy, but if you're actually going right to the grapes and the leaves, I would think that's far more accurate.
Right. I mean, I think actually the two processes are complementary,
Okay.
right? So you need certain moisture level in the soil to have the grapes grow, right? But
Mm-hmm.
once you have the grapes, you can actually figure out if the grapes are getting enough water, right? Or if the water is, or if they're not, if the water is going towards the leaves. So the
Right.
two processes are complementary, and you may actually need both at the vineyard.
Sure, absolutely, especially in the early stages when you don't have fully fledged grapes and leaf canopy. Um, Now, we've also heard of drones mapping vineyards and heat resonance maps and so on. How does AI change and improve that process?
Well, one way that I can think of, right? You have the drones that do the mapping and then you plant the vineyards. But how do you know whether those vineyards will be successful later on, right? So what AI can do, it essentially can analyze different drone maps, right? And whether the vineyards have been successful further down the road, right? And once you have that particular model trained, it can do predictions, right?
Mm-hmm.
What types of places where would be where the vineyards is more or less successful,
Okay, so
right?
more learning. And then back to the grape leaf, the pictures that it's taking. This is an autonomous machine that moves through the vineyard independently. That's based on photo analysis, whereas is the mapping of the vineyards based on predictive data, like this type of soil with this soil composition usually yields the best vines for Cabernet versus Chardonnay?
I mean, potentially, right? It's all about I guess what you program the model and the machine to do,
Okay. Okay.
right? So a lot of it is just it's data analytics based on past examples, right? And if you want to do which soil is better for Cabernet versus the Chardonnay, right, or any other type of wine, you essentially analyze the previous data, train the model, and then it will predict the likely result for you.
And do these machines operate continuously throughout the vineyard all year round? Are they always sort of taking different measurements? How do they work?
It's really up to the winery, right? So the technology of just the autonomous machines have existed for a long time, right? So if if you look at John Deere, for example, right, they have autonomous machines going all around, but it's more farm related, right? So here the novelty is, at least with Kubota, who also makes similar machines in Japan, is applying them to wineries and more to taking the image of the grapes rather than planting and harvesting.
And how is that different? Like, so they're analyzing grape leaves, but how is that different from analyzing cabbage leaves? I mean, I know they're two different plants, but why is Kubota focusing on the wine industry, and how is the technology really different from what maybe John Deere is doing with cabbage?
So I don't know exactly what John Deere is doing, whether they are using AI or if it's more of an automation or rule-based machines that we discussed earlier, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, there's several types of technologies here, right? One is just autonomous driving, right? And at that point, you're teaching machines how to drive autonomously, whether it's through the vineyard or through the farms, or if you want to drive on the street, like Tesla, for example, right? Or other companies that have complete autonomous driving on the streets, right? So that's one component. The other component to it is actually directing it at a wine industry, right? And Kubota, for example, is particularly interested in how to improve the wine industry, right? So maybe it's an untapped market, or maybe they have AI technology that they think is more specific to wines. I mean, we don't know, but there's a lot of research going on in that space.
And I would think that the wine market would be a good one because the margins on wine as a finished agricultural product would be, I would think, just much higher than apples or any unprocessed fruit or vegetable. Like there's just so much value add that goes into wine that I would think that the inputs, the computers and technology that you could use to produce the wine, including AI, there'd be more margin to invest in that kind of equipment.
That's very possible,
Very
Yeah,
much
I
so.
mean, I
Okay.
think to some extent, it's all about it's all about how to make things better, faster, and more profitable.
Sure. Um, and how large are these machines? I'm I'm imagining Terminator kind of walking through the vineyards and its red eyes taking shots of the leaves. But what do they look like and how big are they?
I mean, they the machines come in different sizes, right? Again, I'm just going back to the John Deere reference since that I think more people can resonate with that, right? There are big machines that use at the farm that are just ginormous, and then there's smaller machines, right? And I think for the vineyards, when you go between rows of vines, right? There's not that much space, right? So
Right.
you're gonna need a machine that can essentially go between the vines and then take pictures,
Hmm.
right? So we're not looking at those, ginormous, expensive machines. It's probably something that's smaller.
Yeah. I would hope so because there'd be a risk of compacting the soil, which we know is not good for microbial health and vineyard biodiversity. But I guess they're taking that into consideration.
I mean, I would hope so as well.
Yeah.
We don't want to have AI linked to bad wine, right?
No, that would kind of defeat the purpose. Water these, but then they get smushed. So, like, I know there different machines have different costs, but what might be like an average cost or a starter cost of one of these Kubota machines? What kind of are we talking? Like $5,000, $50,000, $500,000?
Natalie, I mean, that's a question that I can't answer. I just don't know how much those machines will cost.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. I was just curious. And do you have any sense of how many wineries are using them, or like what the adoption rate is, or are they just really test cases right now?
So, as far as I understand right now, we are in the beginning of the research phase. So,
Okay.
we're in the testing phase to figure out how those machines would be used and how they're being used. I haven't seen wide adoption yet.
Right.
However, as both the automation technology is improving with autonomous driving, right, as well as image technology with the machines taking pictures and analyzing them, I suspect the adoption will occur in the future by
Sure.
many wineries.
Yeah. Probably like self-driving and electric cars. As the cost comes down and the technology becomes more widespread and more accessible, there'll be higher adoption rates. Have you heard of any success stories from any wineries using the technology, like they experienced a 30% cut in costs or any sort of early results?
I have not, right?
Okay.
Just because right now it's still in the testing phase. It's too early to tell,
Sure.
right? But I mean, if you look at the way AI technology is going, especially with ChatGPT, right, there is a huge adoption, and people are testing it out for different use cases, right? So I think once the technology is successful, right, it'll be like a switch.
Hmm.
So, same thing with ChatGPT. It was slow, slow, slow. Then ChatGPT came out, and now everyone is using it, right? And it sort of also threw a lot of companies and industries into a flux. So I anticipate if these machines are successful, we'll see the same sort of adoption here, particularly if the wineries will be increasing the profit margins due to this technology.
Absolutely. Yeah. Um, do you think there's a risk that these machines will maybe not completely replace all humans in the vineyard, but for the most part replace all human intervention in the vineyards?
I mean, I don't think so. It will definitely make some things easier and faster. But I'll use the same example that I tell my kids and my clients, right? When the calculator was invented, we still needed to know how to do math, right?
Hmm.
It's the same thing. AI is just a tool. It's very good at analyzing data. It can automate some tasks, but it's only as good as how it's being programmed, right? And for that, you need human intervention.
Right.
So, will it replace some jobs? Probably. Will it shift to people performing other jobs? Definitely.
Yeah. And I've heard, I'm a bit of a tech geek as well, and I listen to tech podcasts. And the advice I've heard so far to young graduates is, you won't be replaced by AI, but you could be replaced by someone who knows how to use AI to, augment what they do on their job. So it's a good thing to know how to use the tools.
Oh, absolutely. It's a great tool to have, and once you know how to use it, it can make your job faster and easier, and also give you a competitive advantage.
Yes, cool. All right. So now we've talked about how how AI depends on human-based input. Especially with your legal background, I'm just curious your opinion, only for information purposes, but who owns that input? Is it the winemaker who purchased the machine or software, the company who made it, or both? Like, especially when we're dealing with, proprietary blends and vineyard grapes and all the rest of it. What kind of discussion has there been on that, and are there any laws or precedents yet?
Okay, so it's actually a very hot topic, right? Because with a lot of these AI models, right, the models themselves are not new, right? It's all about the data, right? So you need the data for training, right? So essentially, the more data you have, the more accurate the model will be. So it's becoming a very hot topic. Who owns the data and who can use the data? Right.
Is there anything emerging, or it's just still completely unclear? Like when people use Cubato, like, do they own their data, the winemakers, or is it all going back to Cubato?
Right. So the way these machines typically work, right? A lot of these machines come pre-trained.
Okay.
Right. In which case, Cubato will get an AI model, right, on the machine that's already pre-trained on third-party data. Right? And it's likely whoever owns that machine owns that data, right? But what a lot of people don't realize, those machines can also be what's called fine-tuned, right? So what you have here, you can have your own data that you use to train that last layer of the machine to make the machine behave in the way you want, right? So that data belongs to you.
To the
right?
winemaker who's
winemaker
inputting it, yeah.
Right. And then the other question becomes, well, you're using this AI machine, right? Are you buying the machine, right? Or are you buying access to the machine that's also being used by other wineries and other people, right? And that is a business decision, right? So it's similar to ChatGPT, right? You want to go log in, use the ChatGPT model along with anyone and everyone else, right? Or are you, as part of the company, want to buy your own version, right? And then that version and that data stays with you.
Right. So people have to kind of know what they're buying and what their contracts say when it comes to that. Do you see any parallels with what's happening now with this data and input with some larger agricultural companies selling proprietary or genetically modified seeds to farmers, and then the farmers become dependent on the seeds, and then they can't grow any other crops because these seeds are, whatever it is, trademarked or copyrighted or whatever they are legally? Do you see any risk of that for winemakers becoming so dependent on these AI machines that then they really are, entrenched with these AI companies?
It's a potential risk, right? It's a risk because if AI makes your life easier, right, all of a sudden somebody else controls your revenue, right? And again, a lot of it is just a business decision. Do you want AI to supplement your entire process for growing the wines, or are you just using it as a data prediction tool, right? And a lot of that is really contractual. Right. Where we actually see people get in trouble, right, is, and this is going to be a reoccurring theme. You need data to train AI,
Yes.
right? So you can have third-party data, you can have your own data, but then you don't have enough data to get a complete picture. You just need more use cases,
Yes.
right? And then people start going on the web trying to get the data, and they may not have permissions to use that particular data, right? So the problem with all these AI models, once the data goes into the machine, you can't take it out, right? Because it's used to train different weights inside the machine, right? So now you have this machine trained on data that you can't really use, right? And if there is a court order forbidding you from using that data, you may just need to start from scratch.
Ooh, wow.
Right.
That's
So
drastic,
that's a
yeah.
lot of money going down the drain, right? You have to retrain your own model without the data. But that's where people can really get in trouble. Sort of get this data they can't use, that they need for their business, and they put into the model without permissions.
And either from your perspective or what you've heard discussed in the legal community, is it fair use to train a computer on data that's widely available on the internet? Because they're not, as I understand it, the AI machines are not reproducing that data. It's not like they're sort of plagiarizing and saying, here is the data. They're just using it to learn. So is that fair use or fair dealing?
That's actually a hot topic right now. And if anyone wants to Google, there's a Getty case that's going on, and that's the argument they're making. Well, if I'm using if I'm using data to train AI, right, is that fair use? There's no court decisions yet, right? So it's something that we're all looking at, right, and see which way the law will fall, right? Because depending on which way the courts come out, and I'm sure whatever the decision will be made, it will be percolated to up the line to the Fed circuit, if not higher, and then just trying to figure out whether training AI with somebody else's data is fair use or not. At the same time, this is not a problem that exists in Europe, right? Because there's a counterpart to the Getty case that's going on in England right now, and they don't have a fair use defense, right? So it may also be something that's really just country specific.
So England doesn't have a fair use law or provision the way the U.S. does, and Canada has fair dealing. So the U.K. doesn't have that?
As far as I understand, yes. They don't have it. So, but at this point, it's just too early to say. There's definitely litigation going on.
Sure.
It's just we don't know what the outcome will be.
Interesting. Do you have an opinion one way or the other in terms of if AI is learning off what's on the internet? Is it fair use or is it not?
It's a loaded question, right? Because just because something is on internet, it doesn't mean it's not copyrighted or protected and that it's available for use.
Yes.
Right. I mean, my opinion as an attorney, right, if you're using somebody else's data, make sure you can either use it or you compensate the person for it.
Even
Does
if
that
you're not
always
reproducing
happen?
it. Yeah.
Right. Does that always happen? No.
Right.
Because I also think as attorneys we're more aware of what can and cannot be used.
Yes.
Right. But if you're telling an engineer don't use certain type of data, and that's the data they need to succeed, that's a completely different calculus.
Okay. Wow. Do you think there's any risk that using AI tools will make wine taste more uniform because there'll be so much data and new learning that, especially from different sources, that that wine may, I don't know, lose its soul or lose the human intuition part of it? I mean, certain university programs have been accused of leaning too far into science and not enough on the art of winemaking. Do you think you could see something similar happening here?
I can definitely see it, right? I can also see it more if everyone are using the same model, right? If you have 10 different wineries using 10 different models, right? They'll be trained on different data. The wine will taste differently.
True.
Right. So on the other hand, there's also a human component to it, right? AI can give you a result. You don't have to take that result, right? You can have a human contribution, whatever it is, to that result to make something more unique. And I think that's where the part of making the wine also comes in, right? AI can do a lot of analytics to make your job simpler, but that final component, that final change, that the winery can make may not be replicated by AI.
Yes, that final layer. Yeah, absolutely. So now there are weeding robots and others that microspray plants and detect disease. Do you think this will cut down on the amount of fungicides and herbicides and pesticides used in vineyards?
It can. It absolutely can, because all that detection can just occur earlier, right?
Right.
And that's a good thing about the machines, right? They can
Yes.
go through the vineyard. They don't get tired, right? You program them to go through the vineyard. That's what they'll do. They'll go through the vineyard and they'll detect the diseases or whatever else they're programmed to do.
Yeah.
Right. So I think they definitely can increase in detecting something earlier, right? Whereas with humans, we get tired. It may be hot. It may be raining. Whatever it is, right? The detection just may not occur as quickly.
Yes, that's true. No lunch breaks for AI.
Yes.
Do you think it could also help more vineyards to go organic because they're being so micromanaged at the individual vine level?
It can. I mean, I don't see why not. But a lot of it is also a business decision, right? And AI, all those machines, it's a tool, right? It's an extra tool that the wineries can use.
Yeah.
Right?
And do you see any parallels between what's happening now with these AI machines in the vineyard and sort of customized medicine where drugs are developed for each person, perhaps based on their own unique DNA?
Yes, because on a very basic level, right? It could be the same or similar AI model that's just trained on different data, right? You want the model to perform in the winery, you train it on the wine related data. You want it to perform in healthcare, you'll be training it on different types of data that's more specific to human health.
Sure. Is AI being used at all to detect fraud and counterfeit bottles in the wine world?
Well, AI is definitely being used to detect fraud.
Okay.
Right. And AI does that. AI can't really say this is fraud, this is not fraud, right? What it can say is, I've looked at all these patterns, I looked at all these data, and I detected an anomaly. Like something is wrong, something is different. Right? Once AI detects that, right, whether it's a counterfeit bottle, whether it's the shape or the color or the sticker, right, it's going to be up to the human to further examine it. Right? So where the value add is, right, AI can look at a lot of data much quicker and just identify those anomalies much quicker. Right? So it can condense this huge set of data to a smaller set of data. And then the human comes in and actually say, well, this looks like counterfeit and this is not. Right.
Almost reminds me of, radiologists interpreting, the results. Like, probably compress that process and then narrow down the field for the expert to come in and say, oh, yes, there's a problem here. We need to do more tests.
Right. And it's actually a great example, Natalie, because there are AI analytics that go into radiology right now. Yeah, okay. It's maybe off topic, but it's the same analysis, right?
Yeah.
You can have a radiologist to do an analysis on an X-ray, and you can put that same X-ray through an AI model and see if they come up with the same result.
Wow. I guess radiologists should be beware of their jobs too, except the best ones. Oh boy. Okay, so and is AI being used to detect smoke taint from wildfires?
It can, right? It can. I mean,
and how would it do that?
So how it's going back to data, just like anything else, right?
Sure.
You have wine with smoke taint. You have wine without smoke taint. You do the chemical breakdown on it.
Okay.
You pass it through the model, right? And you train the model to tell you, is there a smoke taint or is there no smoke taint?
Yeah, I'm curious if it will become more refined in the future to know when smoke taint is not perceptible to consumers, but it is perceptible, it's existing in the wine. And if it can, predict things like this will express itself as full-blown smoke taint, don't sell this wine, versus this is going to remain below noticeable levels, this is okay, to put to market, presuming that there are no health issues related.
Right,
But very
right.
interesting.
And it's I mean, to me it sounds just like a perfect almost like a fine-tuning example, right? Where you have your ready-made model and then you just you give it data, right? You train it on data of wines that have smoke taint, whether it's the chemical composition or whether it's another criteria, right?
Sure.
And the wine that doesn't, right? And the degree. And after that, after you train that model, all you have to do is pass the wine through it, and you get a very nice classifier. I mean, you can have yes or no, right? Simple. Or if you want to have it in the like on a more granular level, right? Is it yes or no? Is this a maybe? Maybe this is good enough, right? So you can sort of train that model to give you different classifications.
Interesting. And maybe in the future, again, what to do to fix it, if anything, if it can be fixed, some sort of taint or other faults. So, we've seen provocative headlines. Can AI really taste wine? Is this simply cataloging thousands of flavor components based on human input and then, for example, predicting which foods might pair best with a particular wine?
I think that's how you would start, right? And it depends how granular you want the model to be, right? Do you want to train the model on user experience, right? Certain types of wine will go with certain types of food. Certain people like certain types of wines, and based on that, you'll do a prediction. Or do you want to go into a more granular level? Right, actually do the breakdown, right? Go into like the chemical breakdown of the wine, go into a chemical breakdown of the palate, right? And then train it on that data, right? I mean, regardless how granular you will get, yes, the model will tell you like you will probably like these 5 wines with these 5 types of food.
And so you've mentioned previously in an article that you wrote that Meredith Corporation, which is a large publishing company, which also owns allrecipes.com, partnered with St. Michel Wine Estates to pair wines and recipes for site visitors. So how is this, I guess perhaps it comes back to the same answer, but I've seen lots of surveys online where they ask you about your taste preferences. If you like tea, then you'll tend to like Pinot Noir. If you like coffee, then go for Cabernet with the oak aging. How is this AI different? Does it just have lots more input than those simpler surveys, or is there any other difference?
Oh, I think that's really it.
Okay.
It's a more, I guess, part of it is more complex inputs or more complex training data or breaking down training data. What I think what you've described is more of just a rules-based approach,
Right.
right? Whereas AI is just being trained on a lot more data to give you more granular results.
Sure.
Yeah. It's another way of doing things.
Yeah, absolutely. And are the actual pairings that Meredith and St. Michel generate through their AI, are they copyrighted or just the human designed web page on which they appear? So in other words, could someone take all the pairings that are generated on the All Recipes website and just put them on a different human designed web page?
That is a very loaded question. Right?
I like to ask loaded questions.
Yes. So the way the law is right now, right? And I wouldn't say it's a law. It's this just came out of the United States Copyright Office, I believe, in either in March or in May. I don't remember, but they essentially said that anything generated by an AI model cannot be copyrighted. Right? That's their guidance. It's not statutory yet, right? But that's what they're saying. If the AI model created it, you can't copyright it.
Because copyright has to be attributable to a human?
That's right.
Okay.
You have to have an author,
Okay.
right? But of course, there is a but, right?
Yes.
So if there is something is generated by AI, such as a recipe, if there is a human contribution on top of it, right, you can copyright that human contribution.
Okay.
And then when you file for a copyright, you have to specify this has been created by AI and this has been created by an author.
So it still leaves open that question that someone could take the pairings potentially until it's tested in court and just put them on another website. That's
Right. Or
yeah.
unless, you know, you add a human contribution and you change the pairings a little bit.
Okay.
You add
Oh
something
yeah, you
else.
could
Oh,
tweak
you
the
change
final
the rest.
layer. Yeah.
Right, that final layer.
Okay. Um, so in the okay, let me just here's just no, well, let's just keep going with the loaded questions. Do you think that AI could eventually replace wine writers, especially those who are just mostly review wines, like give a straight description. It's got blackberries, it's got cassis, it's got whatever, or it pairs with X, X, and X. I'm not talking about long form story, narrative driven writers, but do you think it could replace largely the traditional wine critic?
I think it may to some extent,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think anyone who used ChatGPT has tested that theory, right?
Yes.
Where you have a writer's block, or you're trying to write something, and you put it into ChatGPT, and it'll spit out a paragraph for you,
Yeah.
right?
True.
But right, how perfect is that paragraph,
That's
right?
right.
Are you just going to copy and paste it, or are you still going to revise and modify it?
Yeah.
Right. So, you know, to answer your question, can it replace food critics? Yes. Can it really replace really good food critics who have a humongous knowledge of wine? Probably not.
Yeah. I see two areas where the human intervention would come in at the end, and that would be fact checking for accuracy, because we know at least ChatGPT will just often, not often, I don't know what the frequency is, but will give you factual errors, and then the finessing of the language itself, which can be a bit stilted.
Right. And
Yeah.
there's actually a story with this
Oh, yeah?
where you had an attorney who used ChatGPT to side check cases,
Okay.
and ChatGPT created a case that was later submitted to the court, and the other side caught it.
Oh,
Right. So now it's became, I mean, I understand it's a human error, right?
yes.
But, you know, AI is a tool like anything else,
Wow.
right?
So this was a totally made up case. It didn't
This was a
exist.
totally made up case that was cited to the
That's
court,
crazy.
right?
Wow.
So it's, did the attorney do it intentionally? Yeah, probably not. Was it on the attorney to check that this is a real case and do something more than asking ChatGPT, is this a real case? Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Right. Look, we all have tools, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't mean those tools are right 100% of the time, whether it's AI or not, right? And it's at least in my profession, it's always on the attorney to check that something is correct,
Sure.
right?
Well, I did a test with ChatGPT and I said, write me a wine book. And it started with the table of contents, the essential grapes, the wine regions, and it just kept going. And it was like, wow, it was incredible. And it wrote a book, like the whole book. I don't know how many minutes, but it didn't take long.
Yeah,
So,
so I mean, look, it'll write really great at a third grade level, maybe at the
right.
sixth grade level, right?
Yes.
But I think for creative writing, right,
Yes.
the question becomes, is it creative enough?
Hmm.
Right?
Hmm.
Because at least ChatGPT, I mean, it's trained on books, it's trained on documents,
Right.
right? It's trained on all this literature,
Hmm.
right? But then there's still a question, how creative can it be?
And
And
again, goes
can it
back to
be
those inputs. Yeah.
exactly, yes, can
Yeah.
it be more creative than a human?
Yeah.
It may get there. I mean, I'm still a believer that there's a human contribution to whatever AI is creating.
Well, let's hold on to that hope. It'd be interesting to say, write me a wine book in the style of Charles Dickens with a little bit of, Bronte thrown in to see what they would do based on books out of copyright. But anyway, rabbit hole. I just love thinking about the what if scenarios here. Um, so, have there been any instances in the wine world with AI that have led to any sort of big mistakes or anything like that?
I mean, I haven't really heard of any,
Okay,
right? I think if there is a mistake, unless it becomes public, there's a, it may be suppressed, right?
sure,
So we'll
sure.
never know. But
Yeah.
at the same time, look, if you're experimenting with AI, right, it will make mistakes,
Yeah.
right? Either because there's a the the data set is incomplete, or for whatever reason,
Hmm.
right? I'll give you an example with a Tesla, right?
Okay.
So this was on the news. You have a Tesla driving on the highway, right? It brakes because there is a setting sun, right? It confused that setting sun with a yellow light,
Oh,
right? I mean, how often can that happen? But
wow.
when you're driving, apparently it can,
Huh.
right? And that's a test case that you normally would not account for, but it happens.
Yeah.
Right. So it's the same as any technology. Can something like that happen at a winery? Like, absolutely, right? You may not recognize that a wine is a vine just because there is glare, right? And you
Right.
can have a machine go over that vine.
Huh. Wow. That's a good example. Um, and what about for those seeking to protect their IP that they developed via AI? Is the answer developing a trademark for that IP that was developed that way, like the way Apple has done with Siri and Amazon with Alexa?
Well, I mean, in terms of IP, right, there's different ways you can protect products. There's copyrights, trademarks, patents, and trade secrets.
Hmm.
Right, and based on the technology you use, I guess some forms of protection may be better than others, right? So if your value is in the data and not in the model itself, I mean, trade secret may be the best protection you can have,
Okay.
right? You're not protecting the output, you're protecting the what's going into the model,
Hmm.
right? And it's not just the data set, it's also which data inside that data set you want to have the model weigh more or less, right? So if the model is doing a recommendation on how to create a bottle of wine based on data, right? That may be where the trade secret is, or
Hmm.
that at least that data should be protected with a trade secret, right?
Yeah, I can
Now,
see that being applicable to wine because it all the
right.
proprietary blends and how long do you let those grapes hang before you harvest. That's all I would think trade secrets.
Right, exactly. If you're protecting the brand, right, trademark protection, right, especially if a vineyard is well known or the wine is well known,
Hmm.
right. So those bottles of wine that are being sold in the stores, that may be more amenable to trademark protection,
Right.
right?
Right.
Recipes, wine pairings, at least the human component to it, that's copyright protection,
Hmm. Okay.
right? If you want to talk about patents, the machines, right? The machines that go through the vineyard, the analytics, how they take pictures, potentially the AI models themselves, right? That may be more amenable to patent protection.
Wow. Different tools for different
Different
use
tools for
cases.
different
Yep.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. How do you think AI will change the tasting room of the future beyond sort of collecting consumer data and trying to customize the experience for people who visit? Are there any other innovative changes you see happening?
It may create a different layout for the
Uh-huh.
room,
Hmm.
right? And there's actually a lot of research going on in this space too, sort of creating a virtual world,
Ah,
right? That's a replica of a physical world,
okay.
and using that virtual world to create a room or a tasting, right? And everything that would either enhance the user experience or potentially have people buy more wine or more of certain types of wine,
Hmm.
right? And then transform that back into the physical world.
Oh, wow.
So
So
I think
iterate back and forth. Yeah.
back and forth, right?
Yeah.
So there may be a lot of analytics that are going on, right? Just on a different level.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. If you had people using, Apple's new headset, augmented reality or virtual reality, and then get that data feeding into your, how you, as you say, design your tasting room or the flow of it, and then vice versa, use what people actually do once they get to your physical tasting room to change how you create your VR or AR models. That would be
Right.
kind of cool.
Yeah,
Huh.
it actually goes a step further. Right now, you can just have a device, right? It'll
Uh-huh.
take dimensions of a room or whatever
Okay.
is in the room, You transport it into your virtual room, right?
Yeah.
You can play with it, see what works, see what doesn't, see what can be a business value add, right? And then you transform it right back.
Wow. Cool. What's the most surprising insight you've discovered about AI and wine?
I was actually surprised initially that AI was being used in the wine industry.
Oh, really?
Right. I mean, I was expecting, I guess, your typical case where AI is being used for advertising, right? Or for analyzing what kind of wine a person would like.
Hmm.
I was surprised by the other component, right? That there's actually all this research going on into using AI to grow grapes, right?
Right.
Yeah, because when I first read about, you could have robots taking pictures and analyzing where the grapes get enough water. I mean, to me, that was eye-opening.
Yeah, for sure. All aspects of the process. Um, and if you imagine the future 10 years from now, just pure science fiction, if you will, how do you think the wine industry might be using AI as it develops?
I mean, I would think it would using different machines at the vineyards,
Hmm.
and whether, those are actual machines that drive through the vineyard, or take it up a step further, whether it's drones, right? Because if you can program drones to fly and take pictures, that I mean that sort of relieves you of the whole issue with the soil being compacted,
Yes.
right? And I think you're sort of starting to see some of it now, especially when you have parades, right? You have drones that are being very creative, right? Where they can make different sculptures in the air, right?
Hmm.
It's the same technology if you think about it, right? Can we use that in the vineyards? Probably. I
Hmm.
mean, is it cost prohibitive? Probably, right? But it doesn't mean that in the next 10 years the cost won't come down as well.
Yeah. Wow. I could see the drones, like there'd be a specialty drone for chasing starlings away, and then another drone for, I don't know, leading the deer back into the forest. Cool. This fascinating. Dina, let's just do a quick lightning round to wrap up here. Do you have a favorite wine book?
I don't have a wine book, but I have a favorite wine movie.
Oh, which
Yeah.
one?
So I love Walk in the Clouds.
Ah, with
Yeah,
Keanu Reeves.
Keanu Reeves. I
Keanu
think
Reeves.
it's
Yeah.
mid-90s that it came out.
Yes.
And what resonated with me was that whole crushing grape scene
Yes.
where they're all in trying to crush the wine.
Yeah, it's very sensual. They're all in those big vats, and the women have their dresses hoisted up to their thighs, and
Right.
there's music, and it's very
Yeah, it
exceedingly
was such a
traditional.
beautiful scene.
It is very sensory rich. Yeah, absolutely. Do you have a most useful wine gadget you've discovered?
I actually do, and
Okay.
I have it
Oh,
right
you have it there.
here. So
Great.
this is my electric wine opener.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and I love it because this again goes to, my kids teasing me because every time I try to open the bottle of wine manually, either the cork will get stuck or something will break, right? So my husband actually got this for me,
Oh, how nice.
right?
Electric wine opener.
Yeah, and it's been great.
Good. We'll
It's
put a
very
link in the
easy
show
to
notes.
open the wine, especially if you have a large gathering. You can
Yes,
pop several bottles open. It's painless and it works.
absolutely. Your opener is key if you, yeah, entertain, or even if you like write about wine, you could develop the equivalent of carpal tunnel syndrome if you don't have the right tools.
That that's very true. Here you just need an electrical outlet, so you just need to keep it charged.
There you go. And we'll put a link to that in the show notes if people are curious as to what gadget that is. If you could share a bottle of wine with any person outside the wine world, living or dead, who would that be? And maybe even what wine would you share?
That's for me is sort of like a loaded question,
Another
and
one.
and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
So we had an incident in my daughter's school today,
Okay.
not today, this week, where a teacher got fired,
Oh,
and she was an excellent teacher, essentially for having breast cancer.
oh no. So sorry
And
to hear that.
yes, and what they're trying to do right now is make it seem like she wasn't good enough,
Huh.
like she was not a great teacher,
Oh.
right? Notwithstanding the fact that there were over 50 parents who signed a petition about how great she was.
Wow.
So if you're asking me who I'd like to have a glass of wine with this week, I would say it would be her.
Oh, how nice. Wow. Well, I hope she makes it through. And sounds
Yeah,
like she's got a lot of support, so that's good.
definitely from the parents.
Yes, I would hope that would matter most. Last question. If you could put up a billboard in downtown Manhattan, what would it say?
It would have something with AI
Uh-huh.
and a glass of wine.
And it would keep iterating, it would keep changing, so there wouldn't be just one message, right?
Right. It would be like one of those, picture frames where the picture constantly changes.
Oh, yes, yes, that's very AI-ish. Yes,
Right.
that's great. Oh my
And
gosh,
then, we'll analyze, which picture the people looked at more or less. And,
of
about.
course, got most attention. I love it. Um, as we wrap up our conversation, Dina, is there anything you wanted to mention that we haven't covered?
No, Natalie. I'd actually like to thank you for having me on this show. This
Oh, my
has been
pleasure.
fantastic.
I'm glad you
And
enjoyed it.
I'm talking about my two favorite things, AI
Yes.
and wine.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think I'm a geek after your own heart, too. I love both tech and wine. How can people find you or get in touch with you online?
Finding me is very easy. You
Okay.
just need to Google my name and I will come up. Because
Okay.
I'm on the firm's website, I'm also writing a lot of articles in the AI space. So if you Google me, I'm very easy to find.
Dina Blikshteyn.
That's right.
Right, and we'll put that in the show notes too, the spelling and all, and a link to your website, of course. All right, so I am going to say goodbye soon, but don't sign off yet, Dina, until we kind of regroup and make sure this video has uploaded to the cloud. But thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time here today, and I look forward to when we can chat again.
Yeah, me too, Natalie. And again, thank you for having me on this
Oh, my
podcast.
pleasure. All right, cheers.